we're sitting here and doing nothing anymore. Those people on the jury still have no idea who I am.
Oh, I'm not so sure of that, sweetheart. They've seen you day after day, handling this whole thing with great dignity and courage.
Laura, if that's all there was to it, I'd put you on the stand in a minute. The jury would take one look at you, they'd fall in love with you. There's no way they would believe that you could ever kill anyone until Dara Jensen got up and crossed and let it slip that you have. Twice. Now, is that a risk that you're willing to take?
Wait a minute. How can the DA bring up the past? I thought you already argued in chambers that to do that would be prejudicial.
I did, and the judge agreed with me, but that is not going to stop Dara from doing her damnedest to let that information slip somehow. Look, even if she has got to take another contempt citation or another fine, it is worth it to her for the jury to hear that bit of information. Sure, I'll stand up, I'll object, the judge will sustain it, but...
But the bell is already rung.
You got it.
Is there any aspect of the law that works at all? Because I want to make a full disclosure. I want to tell the truth and explain myself.
Laura, I just don't think it's a good idea for you to take the stand.
I hate it, Angel. But I think he's right.
I don't think it's a good idea for me not to. Come on, if I don't stand up and look those people in the eye and tell them that I am innocent, what are they going to think?
Well, technically, they're not allowed to infer anything from you not taking the stand, and the judge will instruct them not to.
Right, right. Just like she will tell them to disregard anything that Dara lets slip.
All right.
Be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Back on the record with case number 9684660, the people of the state of New York versus Laura Spencer. Mr. Ward, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Laura Spencer to the stand. Would you state for the court, please, your current occupation?
You mean what I get paid to do?
Well, suppose we just say what took up the main part of your time before you were arrested for murder.
I'm a wife and a mother, and I take some courses at Port Charles University towards a degree in social work. I'm also the executive director of the Charles Street Foundation. That's a non-profit organization devoted to bringing new businesses and new jobs to the Charles Street area.
That's a paid position.
Yes, now. I started as a volunteer there, and then the job became available in November. I also volunteer at the Ward House, or I did until it burned down, but now I'm on the committee to rebuild it, and I'm very active in local politics, especially community welfare and issues concerning the environment, and I was campaign manager to re-elect a city councilman.
And just so everything's above board, would you tell the court, please, the name of that councilman?
Councilman Justice Ward.
Thank you. Now, would you Tell us, please, the events that led up to your being at Ward House the evening of March 15th.
I wasn't supposed to be there. Cora White and I had planned to take the children on an overnight excursion to Rochester. They were going to the Science Museum there.
And those plans changed?
Yes, as it happened, Cora took the kids and I stayed behind.
And why was that?
One of our babies, James, seemed to be feeling a little ill. He was running a low temperature and he was fussy and he was pulling on an ear. And I've had a lot of experience with ear infections. My daughter, Leslie Lou, is prone to them. So I thought we shouldn't take the chance. And I decided to stay behind at the Ward House with Leslie Lou and James to keep an eye on them. I called my pediatrician, Simone Hardy, and I described his symptoms to her, and she thought it might very likely be an ear infection. So she called the pharmacy and gave them a prescription, and I called my husband, and I asked him to go and pick it up and bring it to me at the Ward House.
And what happened next?
I was sitting upstairs, holding Leslie Lou in the rocker and singing to her, and James was in the crib, and suddenly I noticed smoke coming in under the door.
And this was your first awareness of the fire?
Yeah, I think I didn't realize it right away because we had a fire in the fireplace. But as soon as I saw the smoke, I got right up and I felt the door, and it was very hot, and I know you're not supposed to open it, so there is a bathroom off of the nursery, and I went in there and I wet some towels and I put it underneath the door.
Did you attempt to call for help?
Yes, I called 911 right away. The phone was dead. There was nothing I could do except to sit there and hold the children and pray that we would be rescued. And we were, thank God. It was a terrifying night.
All right. All right. Now, Mrs. Spencer, I would like to examine the allegations that have been made against you one at a time. Now, to start with, it's been suggested that you despised the deceased, Mr. Smith. Would you comment on that?
I can't deny that I hated Damian Smith. That was quite clear from the tape that was shown earlier. In any case, I made no secret of it.
No more than anyone else, apparently. We've heard testimony that Damian was loathed by many people, but what I'm interested in is how you formed your own personal opinion of him.
I was wary of him right from the beginning when I found out that he was Frank Smith's son.
And why was that?
Frank Smith was the reason that my husband and son and I had no real home for 10 years. We spent those years on the run in fear for our lives because Frank Smith vowed that he would have vengeance on us.
And what had you done to inspire such vengeance?
We testified against him when he was brought up on charges for federal racketeering, and we were responsible for his conviction and imprisonment.
And didn't you receive any help from the authorities from doing your civic duty?
No. Nothing. No one could save us from the wrath of Frank Smith.
But he was behind prison bars.
Only physically. His influence and his organization, his contacts were everywhere. We would try to establish new residence with new identities in a new country, in a new continent. We would try to build a life. But sooner or later, he would catch up with us, and we would have to run again.
What made you stop running?
The last time Frank Smith's men caught up with us, they killed a friend of ours. Mistakenly, intending to kill us, and we realized that we were not only endangering our own lives, but anyone who came into contact with us, and we were tired. We'd had it. Our son had no roots. We missed the people we loved and hadn't seen for many years, and we decided that we would come home. And if he was going to kill us, he'd have to do it in front of everyone in plain sight.
And so when you returned to Port Charles and found his son in residence, you were understandably concerned.
Yes. But even so, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I mean, it appeared that he was trying to live a normal life. But it wasn't that long before we tangled over the toxic waste incinerator, and then I realized that he was every bit as ruthless and conniving as his father was.
There were other issues that you tangled with Damien Smith about, weren't there?
Yes. Damien deliberately tried to undermine my work at the Charles Street Foundation with his plans to build the CS Emporium. And then there was the matter of my son and Damien paying off his gambling debt, which he threw in our faces. He tried to use my son. And that is the reason for the outburst that you saw on the tape.
In which you threatened Damien with a baseball bat.
Yes.
Now, Mrs. Spencer, I want you to think back to that night. And I want you to remember that you've sworn to tell the truth here. If you had not been stopped, would you have, in fact, hit Damien Smith with that bat?
No. I wanted to, desperately. But I wouldn't have. I couldn't have.
This better be big, calling me out of here while my wife's on the stand.
Sorry, but I got called to Albany about the hearing for my predecessor. While I'm away, my guy will probably restore that videotape you gave me.
Hold it, Bubba. We had a deal to watch that thing together, but if you think I'm going to wait for you...
No, I don't. I know that if it affects the trial, we got to move on it fast. Just make damn sure you call me and tell me what's on it the minute you know.
Fine.
Mrs. Spencer, we would all like to know why it is that only your fingerprints are on the bat that was allegedly used to murder Damien Smith, when all of us saw your husband handle the bat on the videotape.
Maybe this couldn't be seen on the tape, but the bat was still shrink-wrapped that night at Luke's. The day that I went to the ward house, the day of the fire, the sports equipment was strewn all over the parlor, and I gathered it up and I put it to one side. And at that moment, I removed the shrink wrap.
And that's the last time you handled the bat that day?
Yes.
So that would mean anyone else who handled the bat, such as the person who actually murdered Damien Smith, would have had to have been using gloves.
I assume so.
Okay, now, about the phone call that the phone records say you made to Damien Smith that day. Would you tell us about that conversation?
I called Damien Smith to tell him that we would be repaying our son's gambling debt.
That's it? That's all?
Yes.
Well, what was his response?
He taunted me a little more about not knowing about my son's whereabouts, and I didn't respond to it this time. I just told him we were paying the debt, and I hung up.
You didn't say that you wanted to see him and then arrange to meet him later on that night at Ward House?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, Miss Spencer, just a few more questions about the night of the fire. Did you at any time see or encounter Damien Smith at Ward House that night?
No, I did not.
And you were upstairs with the babies when the fire started?
Yes, I was.
Well, that must mean that someone else caught Damien in the act of starting the fire and killed him.
Yes, someone else must have, because I didn't do it. I did not kill Damien Smith.
Thank you, Mrs. Spencer.
Your witness.
Is my wife beautiful or what? That was a good move, getting in the whole Frank Smith saga.
Well, I don't know. I don't like the vibe I'm getting from Dara. She didn't object one time, not even when she should have. She's gearing up for something.
Mrs. Spencer, you're obviously a very busy woman involved in a great many things.
Yes, I was, prior to this trial.
Well, forgetting for a moment the night of the murder, have you ever before been involved in any way with the death of another human being?